Hello, and welcome to the My Heart and Mind podcast, where it's all about creating the feel-good mindset so you can make the most of every moment and reap the benefits of getting the most happiness out of life. And now, over to your host, Sally Crawley.
Hi, welcome to episode 12 of the My Heart and Mind podcast. Today, Steve Wrigley joins me and he tells me about how he was fit and healthy and enjoyed adventure holidays cycling. He decided to take a trip to Bali with some friends, and it really was an adventure for him. He tells me about his 2 accidents and a cardiac arrest and a heart attack whilst 30,000 feet up in the plane, and he survived. Steve describes waking up in Singapore, how his life was saved, although he forgot to tell me about the broken ribs he experienced from CPR, and that he had no idea of what had happened from the moment he sat down and plugged his phone in on the plane. I'll say no more, but hand over to Steve and having a heart attack, cardiac arrest, 30,000 feet up in the sky. Hi, Steve. Welcome to my show. I'm so glad to have you here today. I'd like you to introduce yourself to people that are listening and let them know a little bit about your life in general.
Well, I left school at 16 and lived in Bristol all my early life. I actually worked like lots of people in the community at Fry's Chocolate Company at Somerdale, Keynsham. And my first job was wrapping chocolate around, called enrobing, around Fry's Turkish Delight, which I'm sure a lot of people will know.
That's one of my favourites.
Yeah, I think it's everybody's favourite. I stayed with the company, but then moved across to one of the other divisions, which was the Schweppes division. And that took me, as I always tell people, to the Far East. So I actually moved to East Anglia.
I was just going to ask you if you were travelling for business.
And we've been here now for about 35 years. Because I then worked in London for a period of time, but I commuted like a lot of people living sort of outside of London. I commuted every morning and come back most days unless I had to be early in the office the next day. As far as cycling is concerned, I guess I was able to ride a bike, as soon as probably just after I could walk. And I suppose one of my first accomplishments was to pass what they were doing at the time when I was 10 years old was a cycling proficiency test. I think it was the first certificate I ever had, and I still have it today, of riding bikes. But through that interest, it carried on for many years, not fanatical, but I'd always had a bike in the shed. And it wasn't until later in life when we were here, back in early 2006, I think it was, when through a squash friend of mine that I play squash, his father, he told me, was going on these faraway trips, and they were organised tours. So all you had to do was get yourself there. They will provide you the bike and the means and have a guide and have a truck to take your luggage. And the way it worked is that you'd go from one city to another town, to another village, to another. And it wasn't just about cycling. It was also mixing with the community. we'd go into, I remember one time going into a tent and we're all sat around with all these people and eating food and, just socializing. I went to Cuba, where we saw Castro set up his rebellion headquarters, Angkor Wat. It was just brilliant, and I really enjoyed the first trip. I then really had to concentrate on my career and my job, because the future, everything, if I was going to do what I wanted to do, obviously you have to have the income and the money to pay for these trips, because apart from the cost of the trip, there's the airfare, and if you're going to the other side of the world. So I concentrated on my career for many years, and then I came back to it. And at that time, then I tried to do a tour with different people, because when you're on the trips, you actually meet other people, and they may come from Australia or USA and Canada. They come from all over the world, and we're kind of thrown together. And then you build friendships because you're with them for like 10, 12 days. And then a couple of us decided, in today's modern tech wording, is to get into a bubble. So there's been a couple from Belgium and a gentleman from the USA. And we've done, in the latter years, we've done probably about 4 or 5 trips together.
Wow.
Sometimes organising ourselves because the local, if we're in USA, then Bruce would organise a trip. And if we were in Belgium, Marcel and Marianne, my friends, would organise a trip. And in between time, we try to, pick out a tour that we hadn't been, something different.
Yeah.
And this year, if all things being well, we are hoping maybe to go to South Korea in September. But it's probably unlikely, I would think. It's 50-50 at the moment.
Yeah, there's so many things, isn't there, at the moment that you have to take into play, whether or not we can travel.
Yeah. That's like everything's on the sort of going away holiday adventure.
Yeah.
I think I should mention that when I go on these cycle tours, I go solo without my darling wife. But I tell her it is an adventure, not a holiday. But I do holiday with my wife.
Yeah, 2 different things, aren't they?
To make that clear, just in case she listens to the podcast.
So you sound like you were really fit and healthy, and you were like cycling, and you also had that love of travel and meeting people. So tell me a little bit more about what happened on one of your trips.
Well, it was in 2016. We had the trip we were going on was to Bali, Indonesia. And the reason why we were going, I mentioned about our friends and my friends that I'd met, Marcel and Marianne. They run a dentist practice in Belgium. And a very good friend or a customer of theirs, the daughter runs, by coincidence, a cycle touring company in Indonesia.
Oh.
So we all thought, the 4 of us thought it would be a really good thing, and we would have exactly the same. It would be like all the other tours, but it'd be a very small group. It would be almost like an exclusive group, and we know obviously they knew the Doriana, who was the person running it. So we signed up for it, and so that was the start of the tour. The difference was the terrain was mountain bike, and the climate, of course, was very tropical. And instead of like broken tracks in roads, there were a lot of jungle paths, going through greenery and forestry and mudslides. It was a real toughie, as tough as any of the others had been on. It was quite stretching.
Doesn't sound very easy at all to me. I like the flats.
After every ride, it's always enjoyable because we end up somewhere and we have a cold beer and we sit down and we reflect. And because of the hard riding, you always sleep well every night, where even if you've got a very uncomfortable bed, you will sleep well. So there is the upsides. And it was remarkable scenery, absolutely lovely. So it was well worth it. And I was feeling good. I felt good for most of the tour. I was strong. The other couple, the married couple, are very strong. They're like diehard cyclists, and I'm more casual. But it was good. I was competitive. We're not competitive, but I was keeping up with them, and they didn't have to wait for me to catch up to them. So, and I did have 2 accidents, which did sort of, when we come on to talk about my heart attack, I did think about it afterwards. One was on a mudslide where you're going down on a bike down a hill in the jungle, and suddenly there's a mudslide and the bike just takes you away. You can do nothing about it. You can't really abandon a bike. It's not like you can jump out the car door.
Yeah.
You just have to go with it until you crash. So I crashed onto the floor and I got thrown onto the floor. And but I was so lucky because there were no sort of stones or rocks or trees. So it was one of those where you go sort of smack down and you're winded and, you can't breathe. But, it was only a little bit of time. And then I thought, and I get up and I think, oh, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel okay. And it was a really good feeling. And when something like that happens, you feel lucky. You feel you've been blessed when something like that happens.
I totally agree.
That could have been quite dangerous. Now, this unbelievable. Now I've been on these trips for, 10 trips. I've never had any incidents. And here I am. This is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a second one. And we all know that things come in threes, and we'll go back to the third one later.
Yes.
So the second one was very much in that country. They had a lot of war. So they were like bomb craters that had grown over with vegetation. Yeah. And if you're a cyclist, it's fun to get on the edge of one side, go down into the dip, and then try like hell to get up the other side.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Because if you don't, you're in trouble. So we had our guide with us, and he was over the other side of this big bomb hole, and there's all lots of vegetation, but you've got enough room to go down and go. So I thought he said go. So I went, and
right.
You're pedaling like crazy, but unknowing to me, he was going the other side. So we just crashed into each other.
Ooh,
and once
ouch.
again, I got thrown off the bike and I landed again on my back, and I had, a little bit of a knee thing, but it was nothing. I mean, what could have happened? Because we were both going full speed. None of us could stop. And, so I'm blessed again, the second time.
Absolutely.
And so all was well. And we continued the trip. And eventually it came to an end after the 12 days. And on the last day, we were in separate hotels. And the married couple, I thought I would give them a day on their own, their rest day. It's our rest day before we fly back from Dennis Bar. Yeah. So I thought I'd go for a run. It was quite a nice day. I was right by the beach. I thought I'd have a nice little run along the beach, do something a bit different. And I can usually run about 4 or 5 kilometers very slowly, but I can do that. So off I go very slowly. But after about less than a kilometer, I was really struggling. This was just, I just couldn't breathe. So I thought it was fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of exercise.
Adrenaline is running for that trip. And then once it all goes, it falls away. So I didn't think anything of it. And then Marcel and Marianne, my friends, they invited me round, and with the lady that, Brianna, that had organised it, for dinner, for the last supper before we all go home. So they had this lovely gourmet meal, and the food to my eyes looked magnificent, but I just didn't have any appetite whatsoever. And that was another sign to me that something is not right here. This was after the run and now the food. The next morning, I went back to my hotel, didn't want any breakfast, didn't want anything, no tea, coffee, nothing. Got to the airport and they were all tucking into breakfast, and I'm not interested. No, I don't want anything.
No. Did you have any pains in your chest or anything?
No, nothing.
Like that?
No, nothing. Just felt not well, really. Just felt not well. Fatigued, which was my self-analysis.
Yeah.
So we get on to, we're both flying on an Emirates flight, which is going from Dennis Bar, Bali to, it's going directly to Dubai. And from Dubai, then the other two will get a flight to Belgium, and I will get a flight to Heathrow. That was the plan, and all the planes were all coordinated. So I get onto the aircraft. I take my seat. My friends are just across the way, so we're talking to each other. And apparently, I don't know anything from that time, but apparently what happens is that I remember charging my iPhone. That's the thing I can remember. I was plugged it in to charge it because it was flat. And then I walked across towards Marianne, who was the closest to me, and said, I couldn't find anything I liked on the menu, so I'm going to give it a miss, which now, like, that's 24 hours of not eating. And apparently at that point, I just collapsed onto the floor right by them.
Gosh.
And they tried to revive me by just tapping my face. But Marcel, her husband, he's a trained dentist and he's trained on first aid. So he did the mouth resuscitation and tried to get me going. Nothing happened. I didn't come around, so they were then panicking, and there was an announcement then over the intercom that is there a paramedic or doctor on the flight? And apparently some Good Samaritan came forward. By then they got the CPR out, and anyway they gave me 2 shots, and it got me going again. It got me, breathing again, and they pulled me up into where they'd prepare all the food. What I've been told. And the next really lucky thing that I think happened for me is that the pilot was prepared to reroute to Singapore, which was the closest major airport, which also had a hospital like 2 miles away from the airport, and then so the flight rerouted. So I landed at Singapore. Obviously, I know nothing about this because I'm totally out of it. And and then when I think back of like this pilot made this decision, did he, what made it,
he had 2 choices, didn't he?
All those people that are going to be disrupted, like 150 people, I don't know, on board, all their luggage, everything, and all their connections at the other. So I only thought about this afterwards, how lucky I was that the captain or the decision was made to reroute me, because if it hadn't, I don't think I would be here now. Absolutely. So they get me to the hospital, and the ambulance is waiting. I'm not conscious at this stage. And they take me to the hospital. And the first thing I know is I think it was probably hours and hours and hours later. I wake up and I don't know what I'm thinking, because there are all these people stood around a bed, and I'm in a bed. They've all got white coats, and I just remember them having clipboards. And one of them, I think it must have been the doctor, said, Stephen, you've been in an incident, and you're in Singapore, Changi Hospital in Singapore. And I said, no, I'm not. This is what I'm supposed to have said. I don't remember saying this.
Yeah.
No, I'm in Dubai. I'm going to Dubai. Take me to Dubai. I need to be in Dubai, or something like that. Because obviously I suppose I had all sorts of things. Anyway, and that's what happened, is that they got me to the hospital. They'd done the operation, and I woke up, and lucky. Yeah. Every time. And unbelievable. You couldn't write a script.
No. And the amazing thing is, the amazing thing is that, that was a cardiac arrest, and the survival percentage is really low when you're on the ground, never mind 30,000 feet up in the air. So, as you said, Good Samaritan, they really knew what they were doing, didn't they? So how did you feel at that point about what you'd been through when you first woke up? And actually, what surgery did you have? Did you have stents? Did you have open heart surgery?
I had a stent in the main artery. A stent. It was completely 100% blocked. And there was another one that was blocked, but they said it was insignificant at this point, and I would have it done when I got home. But that never happened, and perhaps I can tell you that a little bit later on. But so I'm in the hospital, and the people were really wonderful there. I mean, in no time they had my luggage back, they had my mobile phone back, my communication. I had somebody to help me to get onto the internet there in the hospital, so I could regularly my wife.
It must have been so scary for her and for you, because communication must have been so difficult.
She didn't believe it. When she had the call from the hospital, she didn't believe what had happened. she said, no, it wouldn't be Steve, somebody has stolen his passport.
Yeah.
Sure.
I guess because you're so fit and healthy as well.
Yeah,
And
she thought that, yeah.
Yeah. And you weren't in Singapore, were you?
No,
No.
no. So, and as soon as she realised, of course, she was trying to understand how quickly she can come over and be with me. But that, obviously, you can't just instantly book a flight.
Mm-hmm.
So she did come over after it was just as I was coming out. I was in the hospital, I think, for 4 or 5 days where, and they were absolutely brilliant there. And there was a funny story, which I think I'll tell, was when I was on the recovery, and it's like 3 days into the, and I'm feeling better, and I'm walking around. I'm going downstairs to Starbucks, which is in the hospital, and having coffee, and so I was starting to feel good. At that stage, I wasn't, probably a little bit anxious, but not too bad, because I think I've kind of understood the picture, and I'm thinking about the relief of what's happened to where I am. So at this point, I'm good. But the nurse, I think they were testing my brain or my memory, because of course sometimes apparently you lose some of your memory. So the doctor asked me, she said, Stephen, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And I'm going to tell you 3 things. And when I talk to you a bit later on, I'd like you to answer. I'm going to ask you again. I want you to tell me the 3 things. So, of course, in my mind, I thought, well, I must do that. It's like, that's competitive, isn't it? I have to do that. I have to win this one. Of course, the next day she came back one lunchtime and said, oh, you remember I asked you 3 things. Can you tell me any of those 3 things? I said, no, I can't. I have to be honest. I can't tell you them. But what I do know is that I remember you asked me, you were going to tell me 3 things.
Better something than nothing.
I didn't get anything. And that was, So that was where we were there. And at that time, then I had to go in and stay in a hotel, which they fixed up for me. And whilst I was in hospital, I had 2 visitors. I had a lady who is the mother of my grandson's girlfriend. That's right. She hardly ever knew her, but she got to know about it and came to see me. She lives in Singapore. And also another friend of a friend from home who's got a Singaporean friend. And they came to see me, and people were so friendly. They were just lovely. I really want to go back to Singapore at another time in a different way.
Small world, they say.
Yeah. So I had a couple of weeks, and I wasn't feeling good. And then I started to get a little bit more anxious about things and thinking, how would my life, now being so active. But they had told me, like, a program that you could start walking in, and I walked into town, and and I was starting to feel a bit better. But it was about 3 or 4 weeks before then eventually they sent a doctor from the UK. A doctor had to come across from the UK, and he couldn't come for a certain time. So I could have actually come home earlier, but I couldn't come home without the doctor.
How did you feel being so far away from home and being unwell?
Well, I think this is a good thing about, what we're doing with things like Zoom. I mean, it wasn't Zoom, but I was speaking to my wife on a regular basis and having phone calls from people, and the people were so nice there. So I felt, I'm in the best place. And I'm philosophical when it's time for me to go home safely, because I have to go back in an aeroplane now. You can imagine my mind's thinking, well, I was all right until I got on the aeroplane, and I've got to go up again in the aeroplane. Do I really want to be doing that? So I was quite anxious about that. So, as they say on the TV, we follow the science. I was following what the medical people were telling me. So the English doctor came over. He did a kind of checkup on me in the hotel room and made sure I was fine. and then said that it's better that I have a wheelchair because we're going to go Turkish Airways and we've got to go through a couple of things. And it's better, even though I know you're capable of walking, it would be better for the paperwork and officials. Otherwise, we could, it would be quite difficult. Just take it from me. Just, go into the wheelchair. And
do as you're told, basically.
Do as you're told, yeah. So that's what happened. And we got all the way through back to London Heathrow, and there was an ambulance waiting for me. And then I drove home. My wife was here and had a cup of tea, and I'm on my second life now.
Yeah. So it's a cat that has 9 lives, not human beings.
Yeah. So, and I only have admiration and thoughts for all the people that helped me along that journey. And I've always been a big fan of. There's an American chap, a late American chap, who called Dale Carnegie. That you might have heard of Dale Carnegie.
I've heard of Dale
philosopher,
Carnegie.
and he says things that are really good. It's like, don't find people doing things wrong, find them doing right. Take the worst thing that can happen and work back from that. And he was my inspiration. I've got his little book here, which I read, and I've shared it with lots of people. And there's so many things to, when there's a problem, what causes the problem, what's the best possible solutions, what is the best solution. Yes. And I this is little book, and I've got lots of other books because I've read about him. He was just such a wise person, and I think I'd like to think I've adopted some of his wisdom.
Yeah, he was a life changer for me as well in my lifetime.
Oh, right.
I did some Dale Carnegie training, and I've read his books, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah,
and
so have I.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. So I will link to this.
It's so good. Yeah. And I used it in business, really. I did the training as well. I did a course, I think, for about 10 weeks, and you get a pen, I think, if you...
That's it, yep. And a copy of his books.
And I think he helped me in my career whilst I was working. I seemed to get some promotions along the way, and I used a lot of what he said. I adapted to the way I ran business. And then having this incident, and everything that he says, some of the things it helped me get over any anxiety or frustration.
How did you feel about the memory loss? As in, when you were describing, you remember getting on the plane and plugging in your phone. When you think back, does that stress you or make you feel anxious, or are you at peace with, actually, I was probably better off not remembering?
I remembered you just told me that. Yeah, what happened? I had a brain scan. They did a brain scan, and apparently it was fine. Right. But I can say now that when I'm at home now, there are, apart from I've always where's the keys, where's my phone? I do sometimes, I'm trying to remember a name of a football player or something, and I should know them, and then I think my mind panics a bit, my memory panics a bit that I can't find. Then I have to just wait a second, and then I normally get it.
Yeah.
It's just, why can't I remember that? And then you just get a little bit of, but I think anyway, with age, if I'm a third ager, so your memory does, like a lot of other things, change a little bit, and maybe.
I think it's because we've got so much wisdom in our brains, we can't hold it all in. That's what
exactly.
I've got down
to. Head, and I might seem like I've got one on this podcast.
So, did you experience any emotional feelings after your heart attack, or did you actually kind of have that I am lucky and just get back to work? And
no, I think in all the way through this, there are times, probably, maybe week 3, when I would be lying in bed and thinking, feeling a little bit sorry for myself. And feeling a bit sad, really, because sadness is an emotion. Mm-hmm. I'm quite capable of, that. And I think that was happening then a little bit. But then you look for positivity. Then you look for something good. That, oh, look, tomorrow I'm going to walk down the shopping centre, and as it happened, I probably shouldn't have done it. When I went down to the shopping centre, the big shopping centre in Singapore, there was the Liverpool Football Club, and I'm not Liverpool particularly, but I'm very keen on soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing, they had like a setup of indoors of the goalposts, and they had an electronic goalkeeper, and they were inviting people in the shopping centre, because they were promoting Liverpool, to come and take a ball and have a kick at this mechanical goalkeeper.
Right.
And if you were to get a goal, then you would get a mug. So, and I kind of studied it, and I could see, as in real football, the only two places to score really for penalties is top left or top right corner, because that's where the mechanical keeper couldn't get it. So it's a space about twice the size of this computer. And so I got so tempted. I know I shouldn't have done, given the fact that, but I had a go. It was only one go. And but I missed.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you got the goal.
No, it just went over. I was close, but not good enough. So I didn't get a mug, but at least I did something in the way of more than walking.
Yeah. It was very life affirming, I would imagine, for you doing something like that as well.
Yeah, because you're always looking now to see how far you can get back on the saddle. Yeah. To do the things that you were doing before this happened. And I mean, I was on a ride yesterday. We did 43 kilometres yesterday on a bike ride. Not fast, but 43 ride.
Nice and steady.
Lovely day yesterday, sunshine, lovely hills, Suffolk, and all around the hills. Well, it's not very hilly, but it's a beautiful scenery, beautiful country.
Yeah. So have you got any tips, because particularly maybe around getting back to exercise and getting your fitness back? Because a lot of people me and myself, I was absolutely wiped out. It was really hard to get exercising again, and I was a full-on martial artist before. So is there anything that you did that you think you could help other people with?
Well, I think everything is being thrown at us today, really, with I think I was doing all these things like Joe Wicks, he's the man now, isn't he, and everybody. Mm. But certainly I think you have to, first of all, listen to what the doctor, because I had rehab.
Yeah.
And that was very good in the hospital in Bury St Edmunds. I did I think it was a 6 or 7 week course, and they gave you lots of information because everybody is damaged in a different way, either mentally or physically, and have to take the journey right for you. Yeah. I felt quite physically strong afterwards and started doing things and building up. So I've got back to pretty much as I did before, but probably not doing it quite as well, perhaps. Mm. But then that's not about the heart attack. That's just about you getting older, and you.
Yeah, life changes, doesn't it?
You can get to that football, or you don't get to that whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I think it's a very individual thing. But I think what it's told me is that you can, everything is possible, and I think it's sometimes mind over matter, and also your enthusiasm for life. For life. You want to. My dad recently passed away. 6 months ago, and he was 96. Mm-hmm. And so that's my, and if I can do all the things I want to do, I've still got a long way to go. Being 72.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's that attitude really. And I think it's got to come from within you. But with a little help from people around you to support you really. And that's, and everybody, as I said, when it all happened, I had the just unbelievable people. And I think I told you about the heroes, didn't I?
Yes. Share with everybody about the heroes.
Well, when I left the hospital, I got really lucky because all the people, they were having a little meeting. They must have been having one of their, and I had left the hospital. Then I went out and I bought a little some chocolates for the staff And as I got back, they were all having a meeting. So I was able to sort of just thank them personally, all of them. I said, oh, thank you. And I gave them some chocolate. But then, I think during the course I was there, they said, oh, if you say you work for a chocolate company, so, or chocolates is always good conversation. So when I got home and I saw the heroes, I thought I'd have to get who were the doctors. And I got all their names and I put it on a box of heroes, and I couldn't send it. So I photographed it and I sent it to them and saying, look, you are my heroes. And it was just a little thank you from when I got home, really.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Every time I see a box of chocolates now, I think of, the people there and how good they were, and I can remember. I'd love to see them again, actually. Now that time has moved on, as I say, 2016.
Yes, I mean, it's quite a long time, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it'd be really great to give them. Well, maybe we'll send some links to from this podcast to them so that they can have a listen to your story.
Yeah.
That would be nice. So listening to you, you've talked about feeling lucky and being grateful and all the rest of it, and they're really good, positive mindsets to have. And it's great that I can hear that you're getting back to fitness. And was it September that you're planning to go a trip abroad again? So it's obviously not put you off flying.
No, we did it. I have done one trip since, but I have to say, my wife wouldn't let me go to the more wild Far East. So I managed to negotiate a trip to Canada with the same people. And the three of us went, and one of them has a relative there, so we didn't need an organised tour. We could do our own thing.
Yeah.
We had a fantastic trip. And then, of course, now I'm now sort of done. Canada is a lot sort of different than when you go to some of the other faraway places. And the place I've chosen, South Korea, as you probably know, is much more. There's going to be interesting things to see there, but it's not like Indonesia or Bali or Laos or Malaysia or Sri Lanka. When you're, great places when you see that you go to see the tea plantations in Malaysia. But you're right out in the wild. So I'm now a little bit more careful and being a little bit more selective, still wanting to do the same things, but perhaps it's a lot more civilized and a lot more less risk of having a problem when you're miles away from any kind of help with a hospital or anything like that.
Yeah, so you realise you're not invincible.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my sort of plan, really. And as long as my wife gives me a kitchen pass.
Yes. Good on your wife. I'm glad that she's
for my adventure.
Yes, for your adventure. No holiday.
Let's get that. Just in case she listens to it.
So it sounds to me, and I mean, would you agree that having a cardiac arrest, a heart attack, 30,000 feet up in the air, and landing in a foreign country for your treatment has not held you back at all?
No, I don't think so. I went back to work again. When I came back, when I felt fit enough. So I went back to work. I mean, I retired officially about must be about 10 years ago. But then I've been doing some sort of part-time work, really. That's doing some sales and things like that with farm shops, trying to sort of get them to take local food, because food now you've probably got farm shops close to you, and they're looking for local suppliers, small suppliers, and so that I quite enjoyed that. But I stopped doing that about 2 years ago and sort of concentrated on
enjoying the pleasures of life.
Retirement, That's where we are at the moment.
So it's been lovely talking to you. Have you got anything extra that you'd like to add? Any tips, any resources? I know you mentioned the Dale Carnegie, and one of his for me was the, I've got it up on my shelf there. What's the title of that? Oh, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living Your Life.
Yeah.
That's really fundamental for me.
It is, ditto.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Well, I have taken on Heart Matters from the British Heart Foundation, and I enjoy reading. I get the regular emails from them. And, I look at, there's lots of links there, and yeah, so I read that regularly, and I get a lot of inspiration from that, really.
Yeah.
And
I'll link to that
the
as
only
well.
other thing I try and do is I have I ask to have my blood taken every 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and that also tells me about the well-being. They, now with the NHS, they will give you a detailed report. So I've made it my business to look when they write these forms back, and it's all kind of very techie. You can unscramble that and see that, if it's to do with your cholesterol or what it should be. So I take care. This is why this Christmas present this year, I've got one of the Apple Watches. I'm not advertising for Apple. If it ever goes to them, look, I'm a fan. And it is really helping me when I'm thinking. I was telling you about the other problem that I had earlier.
Yeah.
And I checked, and they've got like an ECG thing on there. And if some of those numbers would have been wrong, I would have been much more anxious about it.
Yeah.
But they weren't. So that's why the course of action that I took.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think, and there are lots of these things now. There's the Fitbits, and they're all very good. And I think it just gives you, if you are, worried about anything, I would say, by what I think a lot of them are doing all the same thing, but in a slightly different way.
Right. Yeah, and it's a personal favourite. It's a bit like VHS and Betamax.
Yeah. Back to that argument, decision making. But I think they're good, and I think it does give you a little bit of security, and that everything, all the dials are going the right way. And if you have been damaged, and you didn't know that you were until the big thing happened, then you're looking at the barometer and just checking the numbers, really. And that's what I would do. And
yeah, I agree. I bought myself a blood pressure machine.
Ah, right, okay.
After my heart attack, because my blood pressure was all over the place, and it just, whenever I had any concerns, it'd be one of the things that I would just check to make sure that it gave me the confidence rather than allowing my mind to wander and worry.
You don't know, do you? And you can't be calling the doctor to see them every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I do that, and unless, of course, I have something like we talked about earlier. But otherwise, and obviously anything, if I see any articles in newspapers, then I'm always interested to read about what anything to do with heart and cardiac.
Yeah,
I read it because it's something that's happened, and it's something I want to know about, and try and understand a lot more, because technology is moving with them, aren't they? The way the stents are probably different material they'll be using.
Yes.
And one of the things that was always interesting, I came back and asked about the 70% to the cardiac people, and they said in the hospital,
mm-hmm.
and they said, because I'm thinking, well, if you've got an artery that's blocked 70%, why, that's not, surely you have to sort that one out as well. But apparently it's not to do with that. It's, if you're still getting the right numbers through the blood flow and everything, you leave well alone. And so I understood that, and I maybe have had it for, maybe had it forever. I don't know that.
Yeah.
It's not always what you think. Oh, it's got to be, well, that one's now back 100% is clear. Let's clear this other one. Well, that one, when does 70% become 80%, become 90%?
Yeah. But they're good. We trust them, and they know what they're doing because they've got a long history.
Yeah, we trust them.
So, Steve, I'm going to wrap up now and say thank you so much. It's been brilliant talking to you. I am thankful to all of the good Samaritans that have been in your life, and for the quick action of the pilot who brought you down. So,
absolutely.
And I will link to everything that you've mentioned in the show notes, so other people can get to hear about Dale Carnegie and Heart Matters, etc. So thank you again.
You've been listening to Sally Crawley and the My Heart and Mind podcast, a show for you if you've had a heart attack, cardiac event, or other life-changing experience and want to feel good. It's all about mastering your feelings and emotions so you can feel great and live the life you love. To find out more, visit www.myheartandmind.co.uk and note that that's an AND and not the ampersand character. Go be magnificent.